Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the opening event of the 2021 Richmond Writer-In-Residence Program, presented in partnership with the Minoru Center for Active Living Senior Services and the Richmond Arts, Culture, and Heritage Services. I'm Ginny Dunnell, Community Services Librarian, and on behalf of the library, I am thrilled to welcome you to today's program. In a few moments, we will welcome Sonya Lalli, Richmond's Writer-In-Residence for 2021. But before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the Richmond Public Library is located on the ancestral territory of the Hunkaminam-speaking people. We have many organizations to thank for making this residency possible. As mentioned, this program emerges through a partnership with the Minoru Center for Active Living Senior Services and the Richmond Arts Center.
Thank you to all partner organizations. We also wish to give our sincere thanks to all who were part of the interview process for this year's residency. We have an exciting hour ahead of us. Soon, Sonya will join us to read from some of her published works. We will then have a short interview where Sonya will share some of her own story with us and tell us what we have to look forward to with this year's residency. We will then explore some of what the upcoming workshops will entail. We are now happy to welcome Kamyar Chai-Chien, Program Manager for Community and Cultural Development, to share some opening remarks.
Hi, everyone. It's my pleasure and honor to be here representing the City of Richmond, and I'll keep it brief. I just wanted to say, in addition to what Ginny said, that really the Richmond Public Library is such an amazing partner and champion of this program with the City of Richmond. And she's acknowledged the other partners, but we wanted to make sure that their role in this program is really, really not understated. They're wonderful partners, and all of the arts that we do in the city are supported wholeheartedly by Mayor and Council. So without further ado, we have a welcome greeting from Mayor Malcolm Brodie, followed by an Indigenous welcome by Musqueam Elder Mary Point, and then you'll be back to Ginny. So thank you very much. And thank you, Sonya. We're really looking forward to hearing today. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Malcolm Brodie, Mayor of the City of Richmond, and I would like to welcome you to the 12th Annual Culture Days Festival, which celebrates arts and culture in our city along with millions of people across Canada. This year, we're pleased to offer in-person as well as online opportunities for Richmond artists and residents to participate. In particular, I would like to formally announce the opening of the Richmond Museum's Reinventing Richmond exhibition. Be sure to visit the museum for this display. Discover how city pioneers, horse racing enthusiasts, aviators, farmers, fishermen, and so many others built the foundation of the city of today. In addition, I'm pleased to announce our 10th annual Richmond Writer-In-Residence, Sonya Lalli. Sonya is an accomplished romance and women's fiction author who has been a dedicated mentor for women writers of color. Ms. Lalli will lead online and in-person workshops over the next 2 months. You will certainly want to catch her upcoming reading at the Richmond Public Library. Thank you for supporting arts and culture in Richmond. And thanks also to all the professional artists, the arts organizations, the facilities, and the community groups who enrich us each and every day. And now, in honor of the festival, I would like to read portions of the Cultural Days Proclamation. It reads in part, whereas culture constitutes one of the main identity factors of the City of Richmond and of the quality of life of its citizens. And whereas the cultural community has set up an annual national event, Culture Days, that would consolidate a number of cultural events under a common theme across Canada by promoting the widest possible access to the arts, heritage, and culture. Now, therefore, I, Malcolm Brodie, as Mayor of the City of Richmond, do hereby proclaim September 24th to October 24th, 2021 as Culture Days in the City of Richmond. Enjoy.
Asiam Nasiaya, Antha Mary Point, Tanitsanakwamatwiam, Amid Sepquatquilam. Honored visitors, In the language of my ancestors, I let you know that my name is Mary Point, and I'm from Musqueam, and I welcomed you to our territory. Right here, Iata'i, Richmond, is part of Musqueam. Musqueam people have lived in many villages here on Sea Island. My family, the Point family, was raised and grew up for many generations in what we called Kwayuk, and what you know as Gary Point. Here on Lulu Island in Richmond, we think very closely of this as Ta Shwamitz, our home, and we're very happy to celebrate culture with you. Culture Days in Richmond will be outdoors, indoors, and online. Many ways for people to share who they are, a little bit of history, culture, art, and stories. This is something that is very close to my heart and to those of my family. As we begin this journey, I want to start things in a good way and share our Musqueam paddle song. It comes from my great uncle Dominic Point, Tiakthip. It's a song that we sing when we're entering a new place to let people know that we're coming with good intentions. And it's also a song that we sing at the beginning of a journey, a wedding, a funeral, a graduation, or in this case, Culture Days in Richmond. Haichka, Haitsepka, thank you. Thank you to Culture Days for inviting me to be here, to be a part of the beginning of this journey. And thank you all who are coming to participate. I'd just like to mention in closing that I'm wearing orange today in memory of my father and his 17 brothers and sisters who were sent to residential schools all across the province. I wear it also for many relatives who never came home, for those who did come home and who suffered. And I want them to know that we have not forgotten what has happened. September 30th is Truth and Reconciliation Day. It's the first statutory holiday created to remember and learn. Truth and reconciliation begins with truth. So the truth-telling has begun. It's our time of learning, and it's a time for us to think, what can I do to reconcile the past and to make sure we walk forward together and do better?
Thank you, everyone. I am now happy to introduce Shane Parmar, Coordinator of Community Development and Service Design here at the Richmond Public Library.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, everybody, for attending, especially thank you to Sonya Lalli for coming and being our writer-in-residence. My name is Shane Parmar. I'm the Coordinator of Community Development and Service Design here at Richmond Public Library. It is my pleasure to welcome esteemed author Sonya Lalli to share her writing experience with us today. I'd also like to extend a heartfelt welcome to all of you for coming to today's meet and greet, and to our partners at the City of Richmond for helping to make this event possible. The library's mission is to create opportunities to learn, connect, and belong. And I believe that today's event provides a terrific opportunity for aspiring and emerging writers from within our community to connect with a published author and learn from her experiences. I would like to also thank those that made this possible. We have many people, especially Jenny, who's going to do our interview today, and Sean, who was able to do all the technical work today. And I'd like to my heartfelt thanks also to Johnny and to Camyar of the Art Center. Thank you and enjoy the event.
Thank you, Shane. I am now thrilled to introduce Sonya Lalli. Sonya is a romance and women's fiction author of Punjabi and Bengali heritage. Her books have been featured in Entertainment Weekly, NPR, Washington Post, Glamour, The Globe and Mail, CBC, Toronto Star, and more. Her debut novel, The Matchmaker's List, was a Target Diverse Book Club pick and a Cityline Book Club pick. Her fourth novel, A Holly Jolly Diwali, publishes this October. Sonya studied law in her hometown of Saskatoon and at Columbia University in New York, and has worked in law, as a legal journalist, and in book publishing. She recently moved from Toronto to the Vancouver area with her husband. Sonya, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to the City of Richmond, the Manera Center, and also the Public Library. It's really a humbling and honoring experience to be able to do this and to get to meet so many of you in the coming months. I moved to the Vancouver area just 4 months ago, so this is really sort of it's such a wonderful time to sort of immerse myself into this beautiful city and to get to know people. As Jenny mentioned, I'm a romance and women's fiction author, but I didn't always know that I wanted to write in this genre. I think like a lot of people, I just grew up reading a really good book, going to my local library, Rusty McDonald in Saskatoon, and picking up whatever looks good and reading across genres and for all age groups. And I think that the experience of a lot of people in minority cultures in Canada, especially before, although it is changing now, is that we didn't often see our experiences represented in media, in TV, and of course in books. And when we did see our experiences represented, it was often very traumatic, A South Asian woman, the story is about a forced marriage. The story is about domestic abuse. It's about, the sad parts of our culture. What I really love about writing romance and women's fiction is that I can often bring in some of the heavier parts, but also really focus on the happy parts. And that's falling in love, coming of age stories, and just, figuring ourselves out as sort of, a South Asian Canadian woman. So I'm going to start out by reading a bit from my most recent book, Serena Singh Flips the Script. It came out in February. And it was, I'm not supposed to have favorites, but it might be my favorite because I wrote a character that's very, very different than me, a bit of a role model. She's a bit of a rebel, and she never listened to her parents, and she didn't want to get married and have children. She chose herself and her career first, and she never apologizes for that, not once. And so it was really a really fun character to write, but also she has to figure some stuff out too in a comedic way. So I'm just going to first read a short scene from the first chapter where Serena is hosting, she's emceeing her baby sister's wedding. So she's up at a podium, much like I am now. Most of the men were in tuxedos and the women in gowns, although their diamonds, pearls, and general decadence didn't outshine the sparkle coming from the back of the room, where our extended family and community were seated. The uncles were in kurtas and western suits, the aunties in saris or salwars in true gilded Punjabi glamour. A group of particularly glitzy aunties caught my eye, halfway toward the back. They were gawking at me, and even from here I could see the pity on their faces. I tried not to roll my eyes, imagining what they would say about me whenever I was out of earshot. Already 36, and to have a younger sister married first. Whatever happened to that nice Jussie boy? Did she scare him off? She is not too old yet, nah? My cousin's nephew has a job now. I will make the arrangements. Now that is what I call butter chicken, I said loudly into the microphone, cutting off their voices in my head. The whole room laughed. I'm not sure at what exactly. I hope everyone's having a wonderful time. A table near the bar cheered and clinked their glasses, and I gritted my teeth as the rest of the room joined in, and Natasha and Mark stood up for a chaste, tasteful kiss for their fans. My chest ached, but I wasn't jealous, even though it would be easy to think as much. I was genuinely, wholeheartedly happy that she had found someone to spend her life with. I was also happy that one of the Singh sisters was finally married, checking off the good Indian girl box, which meant I didn't have to. Today had felt like a long, long time coming, if only because Mom had been fantasizing it about this since the day my sister brought him home. Do you think he'll propose, Serena? Do you think they'll have a Sikh ceremony, Serena? Do you think your sister will pick the red jaimalas, Serena? I'd been fielding these sorts of panicked, overexcited calls for years, but I didn't mind in the slightest. As much as Mom adored her new son-in-law, I freaking loved having him around. Not only had Mark proven to be a great buffer at tense family dinners, but ever since he entered the picture, Mom had stopped hounding me about the fact that I wasn't married. I glanced around the room at Natasha and Mark's friends, suddenly nostalgic for my own group, whom I had hung out with every single day from grade school to high school graduation. We'd been like this once, big groups of us sitting around, dancing, telling one another the same old stories that had defined our friendships, built their foundations. But things were different now that we were older. Just a few years ago, I could count on scores of dynamic, caring women in my life from college or school, or whom I'd met at work. But one by one, they'd gotten married and had families. And one by one, their commitments to our friendship took a back seat. Our movie nights, weekly phone calls, or Saturday dinners became less and less frequent, morphed into 45-minute catch-ups at a Starbucks near their apartment when their spouse was at the gym or out of town. They'd forget my birthday or to ask me about the new client I'd scored, but they'd text to remind me that I still hadn't RSVP'd for their baby showers or housewarming an hour and a half away in suburbia. Most of them kept their careers after having children, so it was understandable that they never had time for their single friends in the city, that those few precious moments between working and commuting, bath time and story time, were dedicated to their partner, their hobbies, their own mental health. I wasn't a robot. They were my friends, and I got it, but I didn't have to like it, and I was certainly allowed to resent it. So from this scene, Serena is kind of, as you can see, it's the very beginning, and she's kind of grappling with the fact that she feels left behind by a lot of her friends who have chosen more conventional paths, and she feels abandoned. And she's triggered by this, obviously, because her sister, who she's very close to, has just gotten married. And Serena has this prejudice that she has to work through in the book, that being a wife and being a mother makes you weaker and makes you not there for the people that you used to be there for. And so that's something that Serena has to sort of learn throughout the book, that that's not true. So yeah, I think that's the part I wanted to read, and I'm excited to chat to Ginny.
Are we on? There we are. Thank you, Sonya, for that energetic reading of Serena Singh Flips the Script. We are now moving into the interview portion of today's event. But before we get too formal, I'd like to say welcome to BC.
Thank you. Hello? Try now. Hello?
There we go.
Okay, good.
How has your experience here been so far?
It's been wonderful. I've been living mainly with my family in Surrey, and I've been able to explore Richmond, but we've been coming here to the Vancouver area, twice a year since I was a kid to visit. So I really love it. It feels like coming home.
Fantastic. Wonderful. So Sonya, we are very excited to have you as this year's Writer-In-Residence, and we look forward to seeing what your wealth of experience brings to the residency. Can you tell us what led you to become a writer?
I think like a lot of people who frequented libraries, I loved reading and I loved writing. But I also, and it was never, my family's here today, and I can attest to the fact that my parents were very, very much empowered me to live my own life and to do what I wanted. But also, as being in an immigrant family, we're also always not always aware of the creative fields or necessarily ushered down that path in favor of more of stable careers. And that's something that I thought of. So that's why I studied law before. And now and after that, I kind of, I was in my mid-20s, and I had an idea for a novel, The Matchmaker's List, which was my first book. And that was the first story that I really needed to see through, because it was something that was very much present, something that all my, my friends and people around me were going through. And that is, now that we were done school, we were done college, we were working, okay, what's next? Let's get married. And I very much resented the implication, not that I ever felt it in my own family, but that, that was my destiny, was to be a wife and a mother. And so I had this feeling inside of me, and I just sort of needed to write it. So that's how it happened.
Wonderful. And how wonderful that you had the support to explore that part of you. So moving into creative writing is a little different from your career in law. Did you have any mentorship when you were first starting to become a writer?
So I actually did a program. I did my day job is working in book publishing, and then I also write. And so I did a school program, and I did have some tutors and really great creative writing instructors that sort of really gave me a grounding for what I was doing. I think the first time you open a Word document and try to write, it's just so intimidating. So having that sort of guidance was really valuable.
Great, thank you. So you spoke a little bit about this already, but as you mentioned, your works focus on the experience of South Asian women in Canada. Can you share a little more about what inspired you to write books focusing on this experience? And did you see a gap in literature that you wanted to fill?
Definitely, as I touched on before, I think that a lot of the, there isn't a lot of representation of minority voices in mainstream culture and media, and especially in, a genre fiction category of romance and women's fiction. I think, romance especially is notoriously exclusive. It's all, white women, and there's some really, really great stories there, but there's always been a gate for women of color who really want to enter that space. So about the publishing industry has only really started changing in the last 4 or 5 years, and that's since I guess I was really lucky that I sort of started my journey right when there were gatekeepers and people with power who were ready to hear our stories, at least in my experience.
Great, thank you. And how wonderful that young women who are coming of age can now see themselves reflected in your books.
Definitely.
So your books cover a range of experiences and themes, from complex family dynamics to self-discovery to finding love. And your upcoming book, A Holly Jolly Diwali, follows a, shall we say, type A personality as she learns to become more free-spirited through an impulsive trip to India. What sparked this book? And can you tell us what your writing process was like?
Sure. So A Holly Jolly Diwali was actually my pandemic book. I wrote it last year during lockdown. It was not the book I meant to write, but I was sort of having, it was that season where we're all, watching Hallmark movies and Netflix rom-coms and all these things. And it kind of occurred to me that, all the movies that I'm watching are about Christmas. There are none about Diwali, which is, an amazing festival and so vibrant and so colorful. Wouldn't it be cool to write, a holiday rom-com that's centered around Diwali? And so I wanted to write a story about a woman like me who celebrates Diwali and pays tribute to the holidays of her own culture, but then also, grew up in North America and has a Christmas tree and believed in Santa Claus. So that's kind of where that came from.
Great, thank you. Would you say your writing process is similar for all of your novels?
No, I think the first two I didn't know what I was doing. It was very much like fly by the seat of your pants. I think that especially within the romance genre, which is my first and fourth book are categorized that way, there's very much like markers you have to hit. There's a happily ever after that you have to meet. There's the third act breakup. There's various expectations that readers have when reading a romance book that I didn't really know a lot about, because although I did read romance, I also read all other sorts of books as well. So it was really just trying my best and having my editor say, okay, actually you need to fix that, and going through lots and lots of revising and editing along the way.
Great, thank you. You'll have a number of aspiring writers coming to your workshops. So I imagine you'll go through a bit of the writing process with that. Do you typically start with an outline?
Yeah, so I think there's pantsers or plotters. Those are the two words I see online. And pantsers is fly by the seat of your pants. Plotter is you really try to be methodical. And I think I'm a mix of both, but lately I do try and have an outline. I think of, where do I want my characters to get on their journey? Where are the scenes going to be? And I found that when I did plot more and think more consciously about what came next, it was way easier later to then put it all together.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sonya, who are some other authors who inspire you?
And I actually saw you reading her earlier, Jhumpa Lahiri. I think that a lot of us grew up reading her. She was one of the only South Asian authors that I'd read as a kid, and her book, The Namesake, was sort of groundbreaking for me. I love, currently some of my favorite writers are Uzma Jalaluddin. She wrote Hannah Khan Carries On and Alicia at Last. She lives in Toronto and writes rom-com, and her protagonists are Muslim and strong and wonderful, and there's amazing books. And then I also, who am I reading right now? I don't think I'm reading a book right now, actually. That's terrible.
Well, you're in a library, so you're welcome to find one after. Thank you. I'd love to shift a little more now towards publishing. Mm-hmm. So you have several novels published already. Serena Singh Flips the Script, which you read from earlier, The Matchmaker's List, and Grown Up Pose. Can you walk us through the process of having a book published? So going from having the idea for a novel to having it available in bookstores and, of course, in libraries?
Sure. So, there's different paths to publication. I was on the more traditional path, as they say. It took me almost a year to write the very first, a good draft of The Matchmaker's List. And after that point, for that to what the book is here, there was probably a million drafts in between, and I'm not kidding. But at least for most of those, I had help, luckily. So after I had what I thought was my final draft, I submitted it to literary agents. So I did some research online and had a spreadsheet and looked for agents who were kind of looking for authors in this category, or who represented books I really liked. And it took quite a while to find one, but I did. And then I worked with her for close to a year, and because I was a new writer, I had a lot to learn, and she really worked with me in the editorial process to get it ready, and then she was the one who found the publisher. And then from the time that happens to when it actually is in a library or in a bookstore was probably another year and a half, I want to say. And during that window, it's a matter of a lot more editing. Talking to them about how you envision the cover, any sort of marketing and publicity things that you can prepare for, various things like that until it actually reaches the bookstore or the library.
Got it. Thank you. If you were to do a book tour, at what point in the publication process would that happen?
That would happen after the book publishes. Yeah, I know it's very different now with COVID. I mean, this is the first live event I've done since 2019, so it's really nice to be here. So I'm not sure, book tours look different now, but being able to tour virtually, it is really nice because it meant that people from all over could join in. It's way more accessible, and you can invite your friends and family who live in a different city. So that's good too.
Great, thank you. So I'd love to hear a little more about your career leading up to where you are now. So you have a background in law, and of course you have experience in marketing and in book publishing. So can you tell us a little more about this, and what role has your previous experience played in leading to your becoming a published author?
Sure. It's actually, I work in book publishing as my day job, but it's actually licensing. I work for House of Anansi Press and Groundwood Books in Toronto. I work remotely now. And basically, I work on their, essentially trying to sell, their books into other languages and other markets, other formats, trying to find a book publisher in Germany, or licensing it into, a cheap paperback to be sold by Scholastic in their book clubs, like those sorts of deals. And so it was kind of a step from law in that direction, in that, there's contracts and legal stuff and sales. And so it was a nice step that way. And then as far as, working in the publishing industry, that kind of happened in parallel to sort of my publishing journey as an author.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're very excited to see what you bring to this year's residency, and many of your workshops will, of course, have aspiring writers, some of whom may be here today. So what advice do you have for somebody who is just starting their writing journey?
I think the most, and it's fitting that we're in a library for this, is to read. I think the biggest mistake that I made when I was trying to write, not the Matchmaker's List, but a very terrible book before that, was that I just kind of stopped reading that year. I just wanted any kind of spare time. I just focused on my own book. And I think that's a big mistake, because reading can be the biggest cure for writer's block. Reading is where we find out what we like and what we don't like and what gives us inspiration. If I ever am not really in the mood to write, but I have a block of time free, I pick up a book and read 5 pages. And often that really, really helps me oh yeah, I love this. Like I'm getting excited for it. And also I find that reading across genres and not just the genre that you're writing in is really helpful, because, I write romance and women's fiction, but I also read like nonfiction and thrillers and high literary fiction, because sometimes a certain style or turn of phrase or a plot device or a character development journey, like all these different things will twig something in your own brain about your own work and really help you.
That's great advice. Thank you. Now that you're the writer in residence, what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, I think, like I talked earlier about how there are a lot of barriers in the publishing industry and into having voices, our voices represented. And I think, for those of us who have been so lucky to sort of get in there, it's our responsibility to sort of to keep that door open and to help others. I think mentorship is really important, and I mentor women of color through 2 different programs, people working in the creative fields and aspiring writers. And I think I really want to just to get to know people and to chat and to help in any way I can, because I often find that in these sort of mentorship conversations, I'm learning just as much, just by chatting to people. One of my mentees is now one of my really good friends, and it's just such a nice way to connect with people.
It sounds like such a rewarding path that you've chosen.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Sonya, thank you for sharing some of your story with us and for telling us about your writing process. It is great to hear about your own writing path, especially as we move into the workshops in the upcoming months. So, as writer in residence, can you please share what participants can expect at the workshops you'll be running this year and what you'll be bringing to the residency?
Sure. We have the first 2 workshops planned, which I think are here in 2 Saturdays in October, for sure. And the first one is sort of talking more specifically about the traditional publication journey, and that is anything from how to write a query letter if you're done your manuscript and want to try and get it published, to really thinking critically about how you're pitching yourself, because it's sometimes a bit cynical to think of I have to sell myself or I have to sell my story. But sometimes it's nice to sort of chat to other people and put a little distance between you and your work, because one day it will get published, and then it's something for everyone to share and for other people to find meaning. So I think helping with that distance is really important, and it was really important for me. And the second workshop touches on that too, and that's sort of authentic storytelling, and that's how we can draw on our real life experiences to form our writing, or to draw on the experiences of our family members or our friends. And I think this can be really sensitive, especially when we're writing about things that are so personal, and also writing about things where one day if someone else reads it, we don't know how they're going to feel about what we wrote or our opinion, and sort of navigating those conversations. I guess, my dad's sitting here, and he's been the first person to read every single book of mine. And, I've stopped caring so much, but he's always supported what I've written. So I'm pretty lucky.
Definitely. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Sonya, so much for this wonderful discussion and for sharing what we have to look forward to with you as Writer-in-Residence for this year. Thank you as well to our audience members and to Mayor and Council for supporting this program, and to all partner organizations who are making this event possible: the Richmond Arts, Culture, and Heritage Services and Minoru Center for Active Living Senior Services. We're now coming to the end of today's event. However, Sonya will be seated just to your right there at the table and signing some postcards, so please stop by to say hello. And we also have a number of Sonya's books in our collection, which you can see displayed here, and you are welcome to borrow. And that brings us to the end of today's event. So thank you so much, and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.